Hi, I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's December 4th, 2020. I'm John Swinimer. If you have a comment, criticism, or question, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Ashley Victoria Robinson about Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And don't forget to check out YouTube. Ashley, originally from Canada, now resides in the United States. Her comic book writings have been published through DC Comics, IDW, Top Cow, Action Lab Comics, Alterna Comics, Not Forgotten Comics, and Colonial Comics. She's the host of Geek History Lesson podcast alongside Jason Inman, along with a number of shows for the YouTube channels including Jawin, Collider, Screen Junkies, DC All Access, comicbook.com, Geek and Sundry, Hyper RPG, Major Spoilers, and many more. She is the creator of the Red Shirt Diaries and has been featured in several international commercial campaigns, including Intel, alongside The Big Bang Theory's Jim Parsons. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Ashley Victoria Robinson about Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio. Ashley Victoria Robinson, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, you are flattering. Thank you so much for letting me come on. Listeners, this was my harebrained scheme, and I'm so happy and so flattered to get to talk to a good Canadian brother today.
Well, I really do appreciate your time. Absolutely. So what I normally do to start off the conversation is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
So that is a bit of a difficult question. My mom's family is French Canadian, so we grew up with the French versions of Babar and Tintin and Asterix and Obelix in the house. And so I don't necessarily have a clear memory of what my very first comic book was, but it was definitely one of those OG French language comics. And then we graduated to the Archie Double Digests from the grocery store from a Sobeys, which I think is just straight up tragic that at least where I'm at, we don't have those at the grocery store anymore. But the first comic that I can remember, my dad would give me a toonie, and I remember pulling out of a quarter bin in London, Ontario, was New Teen Titans number 39. It's a white background. It's got Dick Grayson and Wally West walking away, and their costumes are draped over the logos.
Yeah, that's a classic. Yeah.
And Tim Drake is my favorite comic book character, but Robin specifically has always held a really special place in my heart. And I was like, he's not Robin anymore? What's happening? I don't understand. I'm 6. And it was high drama. And that was the first Teen Titans I had ever read. Teen Titans remains my favorite team to this day. That's right in the middle of the Judas Contract arc. I love Tara. I think she's one of the greatest characters in comics. So that issue has shaped a lot of my tastes and my preferences, especially in superhero comics. I actually have that very issue in our spinner rack here in my home right now.
Nice.
Yeah, very
That's
special.
Classic stuff. Absolutely. So that leads me to my next question about who or what inspires you to create today?
Ooh, a desperate need not to be forgotten, a sense of ego that what I have to say is worth a damn. And those are probably like the deep, scary psychological answers, right?
I'm looking more for people, though.
Currently, my writing partner, Jason Inman, is a big inspiration. I know people might think that that's really lame, but Jason is one of the hardest working people that I know. He's the reason that I entered the Top Cow Talent Hunt in 2014, and I won, and I was able to write my first comic. And he works way harder than I do, and he's always working on more things than I do. So it's probably a little bit of a competitive spirit of like, I gotta be as good as him. But like truly, he's so good, and his work elevates my work, which is ideally what you want in a partnership. I guess for him,
Sure.
I just bring him like tea. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm offering to this. Everyone always telling me I'm riding his coattails, and they're not completely wrong. And then we have had the great joy of being able to collaborate with some really wonderful artists. And as somebody whose art skills is pretty much just relegated to stick figures, when somebody like Nicola Scott comes down from the heavens as the actual Amazon goddess that she is and says, I'll show your character. Yeah, no problem, girl. I got you. But imagine that in a beautiful Australian lilt, which I'm not even going to be able to attempt. You want to create work that is worthy of that. And then you want those people to feel like they're happy to collaborate with you again. And then specifically, with the project that just came out, Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio. That's the second installment in a series. And we were so fortunate that after volume 1, a bunch of our readers kept saying, when is volume 2 coming out? When is volume 2 coming out? And then you get all this pressure of, I guess I got to put out a volume 2. And we always said we wanted to do a volume 2, but I better do it before people stop asking about it, which is the loveliest type of pressure and interest that you could have going on.
Absolutely. So you mentioned your latest book, so let's talk about that. For those not familiar with Action Labs, Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, can you tell us a little bit about it? What the storyline is and what people can expect from reading that book?
Absolutely. So if you're not familiar with Jupiter Jet, that was my debut graphic novel, co-written by Jason Inman. And it stars a 16-year-old girl, and it's kind of a mix of Kim Possible meets The Rocketeer. 16-year-old girl inherits a mysterious jetpack with a crazy power source from her dead father, and, like all teenagers, uses it to fight bad guys and give back to the poor, and fights an evil guy with glowing eyes who might not be human. And so that story was nominated for a Ringo Award, and like I said, we had a bunch of really positive feedback. So we're revisiting Jackie Johnson, who is Jupiter Jet, because we love the Stan Lee alliterative moment. So she's 17 now. It's 1 year later. She has been the hero of Olympic Heights and the hero of, try not to spoil a 3-year-old book, Where She Is Located, for a full year now. And it is the next step in her journey along the way. And what's really cool about it is we always knew Volume 1 is very home-based. It's based in her city. There's a big revelation at the end. Volume 2 takes her literally to the galaxy. She goes to space. She fights people in space. And her little brother, who we introduced in Volume 1, Chuck, who was kind of her fix-it guy, in Volume 2 goes on the same journey that Jackie went on in Volume 1. And Jackie, because she's 17, she's just about an adult. We all remember what it was like when you thought you knew it all. And then you had to pay bills, and you were like, oh, I don't know nothing. Taxes? What? And she is going on that same journey, but in a much more fun way of learning moderation. She kind of goes on the journey that I like to compare to Clark Kent, where Clark Kent realizes that you can't beat everything with your heat vision. For Jackie, it's you can't beat everything with your jetpack, even though there's still a ton of jetpack fun.
Wow. It sounds like it's a lot of fun, that book.
I mean, I think it's a lot of fun. The months and months that we spent dedicated to it was certainly it was the easiest creative birth that we've had so far. And all the feedback's been really positive so far. So I'm going to co-sign that and say it's very fun.
Oh, good. Now, you said there was a lot of pressure to do Volume 2. Based on the feedback of this book, do you think there'll be a third volume?
So I've always said that Jupiter Jet is designed to be 5 volumes. So we'll watch Jackie go from being 16 to 20, from being a little girl to being the full-fledged woman of the galaxy. And that is still the goal. That is still the hope. It's just a matter of when and how, as is the question with all independent comic books. Unless you're writing for DC or Marvel, or you're very, very blessed and have a good agent and have grants and stuff like that, all of your creations are dependent on you as the creator and the copyright holder. Usually you kind of work like the producer. So I really want to do Volume 3. Jason and I have a loose outline for Volume 3. We have Ben Matsuya, our series artist, has like soft co-signed, like, yeah, I'll come and do Volume 3. We hope we'll keep him for every volume.
Yeah.
But we lost our colorist from volume 1 on volume 2 because she was booked and blessed. So,
Right.
when people are booked and blessed, we're very happy for them.
Hmm.
There's no point of contention there. So it's just a matter of, I would love to do volume 3 next year. Realistically, there's probably going to be a longer time because the reason that we go to Kickstarter is we do pay all of our collaborators a living wage, and
Hmm.
that can be an expensive proposition. So even after sending everything out for this Kickstarter, we're not going to have enough left over. We're going to have enough left over to buy a couple of extra copies to take around to conventions because postage just went up. Thanks,
Hmm.
USPS. So I would like to say that it's going to happen next year, but it'll probably happen the year after that, depending. But there are more comics coming from Jason and I in 2021. What is
Oh,
time? So keep your
okay.
eyes peeled for those.
Sure, sure. That sounds really exciting. Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
I was looking through your bio and noticed that you're an actress, writer, producer. So you wear a lot of hats. So I'm wondering if you have a preference amongst all those.
Yeah, the thing that I love the most and brings me the most joy is acting. And part of that is because acting at the same time demands the most and the least out of me. As an actor, you really are focused and you only have one job. I'm a producer because I have produced things. I'm not a
Mm.
producer because I'm a good producer. I'm not a producer because I want to be a producer professionally. Just because I worked on content that I've started up, ergo producer. And writing is something that I am very passionate about, but writing takes up a lot more headspace. So yeah, I prefer when people ask me, I'm always like, ooh, call me an actor writer. Like that's
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
preference in terms of the ampersand of it all.
Okay, that's cool. So
Yeah.
that leads to my next question. What can you apply from your experience in the film arena to comic book writing?
So much in a lot of very strange ways because comics specifically are a lot like film and television, but without a budget. So when you are working on something like a script, whether you're working on it from a creative perspective as a writer or from a performance perspective or even producing, you're stuck with restrictions like, do you have a budget? Do you have a
Hmm.
camera person? Are you just using, I'm a big fan of the Gorilla Pods holding the iPhone. That really works for me. So you're sort of restricted by the resources that you have around you. Whereas with comics, I can literally take a little redheaded girl and make her fly around Jupiter, and nobody can tell me that that's dangerous. Nobody can tell me how much the effects budget is. You can really dream and do whatever you want, and that is very freeing. It's only later on when you get into conversations of adaptation that that's like, ooh, maybe we'll restrict it to the city a little bit more than we initially thought. And then thinking filmically or even thinking theatrically, like if you're a very theater-based performer, can help you in terms of writing composed shots. Because depending on what your relationship is like with your artist, Jason and I write for Ben what is called full script, which means we will literally write page 1, panel 2, bird's eye view. Jackie does this, Chuck does this. It's about noon so that everybody who's working on the book knows exactly what's going on. So if you're used to composing shots or you're used to composing a strong aesthetic sense, then that really helps with comics because when you're starting out or when you're collaborating with an artist, a colorist, a letterer for the first time, I always think more is more. So I will give you more information. And then as your relationship develops and we get more used to working together, or sometimes they're just a lot better than you, then you can sort of pull back. Like I collaborated on Aurora and the Eagle with Emmanuelle Chateauneuf, who's an incredible Canadian artist, and
Right, yeah.
she is like so good. Like I punched up getting her. Like she elevated my work so much. So I started writing that full script, and then even though that was our first collaboration, I was like, cool, cool, cool. You got this. At one point, she was drawing a fight scene. And she was like, "I think there needs to be more panels," and I was like, "Great, you anything you want, you're perfect. Never change."
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
Now you've hinted in just in our just talking a wee bit there about potential volume 3
yeah.
for Jupiter Jet, and you and Jason might have something on the go. So I'm wondering if there's any other projects that you can talk about.
I don't know if there's any that I can talk about in terms of saying actual names. Jason has hinted about this that he is going to be doing a Kickstarter solo next year, because he's a big Superman fan, and people always ask him what's his take on Superman, and so he's finally doing that. So that is coming first. And then I did Aurora and the Eagle in, oh God, I'm so bad at time and numbers, 2019, but maybe it was 2018.
Yeah, we've all lost track of time. It doesn't really matter anymore.
I think it was early 2019. I feel so bad for not knowing this. And I did it just as the first 20 pages, right? As a sort of a first issue, even though the intent of that book was always like it's going to be an OGN, it's going to be like a standalone graphic novel, which the older and grumpier I get has become my preferred way to deliver media. I'm over single issues. If anyone loves them, that's amazing. I'm over it. Give me the book. Creatively and from a retailer standpoint, it's also just so much easier. I will die on that hill. And so I've been trying to return to Aurora for a long time. Part of that Kickstarter that I ran, people got cameos. And so I've been talking to a couple different publishers and trying to figure out what that is going to look like. And it's finally settled, and I know where she's going to be. And so the announcement is definitely coming next year. When that's going to drop is another thing. So those are the two things that I can talk about in the most detail. And then hopefully bigger and better things for Jupiter Jet. Those are ongoing conversations. I'm doing the dumbest arm movements that nobody can see right now. Podcasting, famously a visual medium.
well, that's really exciting stuff, though. That sounds like you got a lot on the go. So I'm wondering where people can find out more about these potential projects and more about you online through social media, or you mentioned a website too.
Yes. So I love social media because I'm a millennial sometimes, according to some articles. So please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. The V is very important. Ashley Robinson is like a 6-foot-tall WNBA player who I'm sure is lovely, but I'm not trying to fight for SEO. Those are the best places to find like all announcements, all the news coming from me. I've been working on a website for approximately 100 years. And my goal is finally to get it up in January, which will include a sweet little page that says contact me. Because John and I had a little conversation about that before we started. And it's kind of the death of my professional career. So I'm really hard to get in touch with unless I slide into other people's DMs. So those are the best places. If people are interested, Jason and I do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jawin, Jawin. We call our followers there our super friends, and it's kind of like our Hall of Justice. And all of the announcements that we make go there first because, as you know, your base and your fans and the people who dedicate their time and their funds to you are the people who really drive you forward. So if you're interested in learning before anybody else, that's a great place to find it. And then we have a podcast called Geek History Lesson. We just crossed episode 340 about 17 minutes ago.
Wow,
just came
great.
out. So if people are just looking for something free to listen to, and if you want to hear me scream more about my passion for the Teen Titans, that's on there. And then we finally this year caved and did an episode on Jupiter Jet, which is wild because we typically teach history lessons on different comic book characters or pop culture characters. And it felt a little self-indulgent to talk about our own character. But then we said, we deserve it. It's 2020. Who knows what's going to happen? So those are all the easiest places to find me. If you're hiring, please go to my IMDb and hit up my reps.
Well, that's great. Ashley, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
Ooh, the thing that I would really love, also because I know that this ties directly into the type of content that you are producing, whether you are living in Canada or not, support your Canadians, because when you move to a different country, it can be really alienating. I live in the United States, if listeners aren't that familiar. And I know that we all think at first blush that the States and Canada are not that different, but they truly, truly are. And being a Canadian creator is something that's very important to me. It's something that I'm continuing to explore in my work, and I'm hoping to explore in bigger, badder avenues than comic books. But I would say that support local, support small, support your country peoples. Because that's something that as I get a little older and a little wiser, is something that I'm realizing that I value a lot. So it's true north, strong and fierce. We may be all over the world, but we're all still nice kids who enjoy a beaver tail.
Thanks to Ashley for the chat. You can discover more about Ashley on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2020.